melodic rhythm. Melodic rhythm. Two things that I never thought could be smushed together have been smushed together. So artists like Leotrix, Chime, even some of the new Virtual Riot tracks, they are all taking these sort of lovely melodic sounds that you would hear in like future bass or melodic dubstep and smush them together with the wonkiness and dark tonality of rhythm. When you first hear that, it doesn't seem that it works. So obviously if you listen to future bass like say Millennium or stuff like that, obviously you have these very emotional chords, some nice melodies and that on the top. Whereas you take rhythm, take someone like Infect for example, obviously it's quite dark, it's quite sinister, but then you have this leading sort of synth which doesn't really vary in notes that often. It normally centers around one or two or even just three notes. I mean, there is a meme where like a rhythm keyboard is just like three notes. But yeah, so to combine the complex tonality of melodic stuff along with rhythm and smush them together it's quite a complex topic. I know a lot of people are saying it's a gimmick and that enters into the scene, but for me, I've been a big personal fan of it. So hey, it's your boy Skegg. Sorry, I didn't post last week. I was away. I was seeing family, I'm afraid, so I didn't really have time to record anything. But I'm back, and today I want to touch on a topic that in the last few videos I have actually shown like certain techniques using like vocoders and stuff like that I said I would cover in the future. Well, I am covering them right now for you. If you familiarise yourself now with melodic rhythm, unfortunately I can't play any examples or else I'll get copyright striked. But basically today I'll be breaking down this track here that I've been working on since last night. I was working on it last night because I was sleep deprived. It is like 33 degrees here in England and no one knows what to do with themselves. We are not used to this heat. So last night when I was creating stuff I managed to do a little bit of a melodic remix to the song Digital by Megalodon. So if you're not familiar, this is how the original goes. I was just listening to the song in the car and I quite like that main synth. So obviously you have the first little bit, then you have the... which is quite rhythmy in itself. I know the song is a little bit older now than other songs, but I wanted to play around with that one little sound because it's quite metallic, it's quite nice. So I've been able to transform it into this drop. And you can tell there the sort of melodic, rhythmy vibe comes in because it's quite wonky. You could headbang to it if you really wanted to, but it has that nice chord stack on it and stuff like that. There's a little LARP going in the background which makes it quite colourful. So now you just heard that drop, I'll slowly break down on how I actually go about doing that. So I feel like the best place to start with this is the drums. That will give me permanent hear damage. So if you are familiar with rhythm again, the drums are very simple because obviously when they create like the actual drop synths, they are quite fulfilling. There's a lot of obviously like lows from the bass, there's loads of mids and highs, so in this you don't really want complex drums. With rhythm drums it is obviously the kick, and instead of like a massive snare like you would hear in dubstep, it is more of just like a clap or sometimes even like a click. The snare isn't that important in this, so if I just play through my drum pattern you'll see what I mean. So you can tell you've just got this tight kick going on, laid with a few claps and a little snare on the bottom, but obviously it's not taking the lead. Added a little bit of reverb on there as well, as you can hear on tail, and that's just going along with this single open hi-hat. And obviously I'll give that space every start of the bar when the first drop synth comes in. because then the cymbals sort of want to go when it comes a bit more fulfilling, when more of the synths and that come in. And then the only variation I actually have on the drums is this little fill that comes in on the second bar. And all that does is it just gives a little bit of a break, just between the synths. Obviously adds a little bit of variation in that in. And don't get me wrong, that this idea is nowhere near fully finished in my eyes. So obviously, as you can see here, this in my eyes is quite a boring drum pattern. I mean, as you can hear, when you hear it on solo, it is very monotonous. It's very repetitive. But the whole point of drums, especially in rhythm, isn't to really stand out in the mix. If anything, it's just to sort of portray the tempo, and it's just so like the listener sort of knows where they are in the drop. Obviously, you know when a kick comes in, that's the start of the bar, etc., etc. But for now, this just works. So yeah, let's jump straight into the synths. So here I have the drop. So what is happening here is the main drop is actually made up of a lot of the original synths from the song. So if I take this and turn off the effects, but then to create this sort of tonality around it, because obviously there, it's quite intonal, if you know what I mean. It isn't sort of portraying a chord progression or singing one whole note. It is sort of like varying in pitch. So one thing you can do is add a vocoder, and don't get me wrong, you can unvoice an vocoder, which means like obviously it won't follow any pitch. But what I've done up here is I've created a little track called Pitch Track. So the whole song that I've managed to work out follows these 3 chords. And obviously you can tell they get more fuller as time goes on. But the interesting thing is, this is just a regular serum patch, really nothing special to see here. It's just got a bit of unison on, not even any effects, it is just basically a saw. But the interesting thing here is that I've actually muted that track. And the reason for this is it's actually a trigger for the vocoder. So obviously here I've gone on audio from the pitch track, which is playing the chords. So what it actually does here is it automates the dry wet of the vocoder as time goes on. So what you'll hear is actually more of this chord coming through from the pitch track. And obviously you can hear it a little bit. Obviously you can still tell that's the original sound from digital. If I turn this up, you'll hear it more. And you can tell there it sort of gives a sort of wet sound to it. Obviously it sort of like resonates the sound in the frequencies that the chords are in. So obviously when I automate this, it just sort of ends up with that chord, then obviously without it. So there, as you can tell, when that kick comes in and then it swoops in because of the side chain, you just get this little lingering chord. Which obviously then, that's how you sort of merge this complex tonality of like future bass with the rhythmy sound. So that's the sort of concept that you have to sort of keep on in your head as you go on. So I've done a very similar approach to what I would consider main sound, because it's the main thing that you hear throughout the song is this little sound. And that, again, without the vocoder, is the original part of the synth that I really enjoyed in the original song. Obviously playing like a different pattern and what have you. And obviously, again, if I don't have it... And obviously, as you can tell there, if there was none of this other tonality going on, obviously that would just sound rhythmy, and to be honest, the remix wouldn't really sound like a remix anymore. It would more sound like just an edit, because I am just literally chopping up the samples. Like, you can really tell that is from the original. But then just with this little bit of vocoder on, with tiny little automations, just on every I don't even know why it does that, but basically just on like certain ones I'll make it more wetter to obviously give a bit of variation. Yeah, so if I just play through this and mess through a bit of settings, I'll sort of explain what's going on. So obviously dry wet, as you know, so that's sort of what the vocoder is giving to us. So obviously I had it just there. Then just in the back you can actually hear the original. So its depth is how far into the vocoder you sort of go. So obviously there you have more of the original again. And if anything, it sort of like shortens the vocoder time as well. So bandwidth now is like how many bands, and if anything, the like sort of accuracy of the vocoder. So you can tell now it's sounding a lot like this chord stack up here, and that is because it is at 200% accuracy. It's trying to get every single element from that chord stack into the vocoder, whereas as you come down on that, obviously that's at like 10% precision, but as you can tell, it sort of creates this nice little sort of corpus effect almost. But sticking with those chords as well, so it's still staying melodic, just on a different sort of scale. And obviously the more you mess with that, you can find somewhere that you quite like, so I quite like it there. Then the range, as you can imagine, is sort of almost like a high pass and low pass filter. And you can tell there, he ends up creating a nice little chord. So there you go, like, that's the same drop again. But then with just these little elements changed on the vocoder, obviously because it's the same pattern it still sounds similar, but the actual tonality now of that synth does sound a lot different compared to this one. And that's just, again, we're just messing around a few settings on these vocoders. And as I've said before, like, this track is nowhere near mixed or anything yet, so that's why there's no other effects like EQs and what have you on here, but I just wanted to break it down as I was in the process of making it rather than like the finished thing. So yeah, that's the main thing on vocoder. Another thing, if you don't want to use the vocoder, however, this is more just for one chorded drops, and I'll show you what I mean by that, is this thing called a Resonator. So what this does, obviously, if you play like a single note, yeah, I'll demonstrate for you. I'll treat you today. Instead of just talking about it, I'll actually show you what it does. So if we just grab like a Serum. So yeah, so the song that I'm currently writing in is in G sharp. So that's why this Resonator is in G sharp. So basically what it does is you sort of, it sort of creates harmonics for you. That's the best way to put it. So what you do is like you choose your root notes and then you sort of build a chord on top of that. So if I play us now with this on, the K's up. You can tell now it leaves that little bit of a chord behind with it. So that's basically what it does. It just adds these little harmonics onto the top of it. So I thought it'd be nice just on the whole drop to actually add a little bit of a resonator to sort of leave this little lingering chord on like the actual end bits. So you can tell there are more sounds in that. It's creating that little chord layer on top. And then I know it's very, very subtle in here. Don't get me wrong, you can use it a lot more prominently in other tracks. But it's another way, again, of adding that sort of melodic vibe to it, if you would. Then one thing I've noticed that Leotrix and other artists do in their songs is they add like a little layer that is giving it that rhythm wonk to it. So this one's very subtle in mine. And again, as you can tell, it's sort of giving it that what, as you would hear in many rhythm songs. Then you can just hear it now in the background. Without it, don't get me wrong, nothing really gets lost, but it's just nice to sort of pay a bit of homage, I'd say, to the actual rhythm style. And then, very simply, underneath all those synths, there's a simple bass line. Which is, and again, this was something that I wanted to do, is I could have followed the chords, which would go a G sharp, A sharp, and I think a B on top of that. But instead, because, as I said before, rhythm sort of only really fluctuates between 1, 2, or even like 3 notes in some cases, is that actually I wanted to have the bass line very simple. So play this G sharp up here, then the F sharp just for the second chord, and then go back up to G sharp. And as you can tell, like the bass in this, at least the sub bass, isn't one of the main artifacts of the track. But it creates a nice little feeling around the chords, because even though the chords sound quite happy by themselves, this actually adds that little bit of a dark tonality, in my opinion. Because obviously you're only going from, which is almost like the Jaws theme, which obviously like quite dark notes in themselves. And then for the drop, there isn't really anything else much in there. Little then again, there's little changes in like the actual structure in that, but it sort of keeps a similar concept. But this is the interesting thing, like I could go through this digital song, I could find a new sound that he uses later in the mix, and then add that in for like a second drop or something, you know what I mean? So once you have these sort of effects and that in place, especially with like the vocoder and that, it's quite easy to then like go off and tangent and try out these new little ideas. One thing that I'm just going to show you, because obviously I've said, oh yeah, I've just stuck these chords on top of it. I've just poof, and these chords have magically appeared. No, so what I've had to do beforehand is obviously like figure out the basic chords underneath it, which took me quite a bit of time. It must have taken me over about half an hour just finding the right chords, because obviously it's hard for a song that has just a few notes in it. It doesn't really have major or minor chords in there. So how I started it with this little intro section. So obviously you have this original vocal going on, and I decided that this bass line worked for me. So you can tell there, like when you hear the bass now, you're like, oh, okay, that sounds quite spicy. Then obviously on top of that, and again, I'm not saying that, oh, I just randomly played a few notes and it worked. Obviously I was here with notes quite a while, just trialing and erroring and being like, okay, this is the pattern that I want in the end. So from there, from the root notes, I was able to build chords on top of it. And again, that was another trial and error process. Then I added this little like pad that was just a preset on Ableton with a triplet ARP on it. And that's just playing this D sharp major chord, I believe. D sharp major 7. I don't fucking know. Oh, my music theory is shit, so please don't take music advice from me. Well, music theory advice, but you know what I mean. But yeah, that one worked for me again. Then I added this other pad on top as well, which plays a bit of it in, or it's still the D sharp major 7, did I say? Yeah, D sharp major 7 chord, but it plays a bit of an inharmonic of it. I hope this is making sense, I really do, because it can get quite complex and the terminology can get a bit lost if you're a bit new to it. But yeah, I mean, that was the main way that I did my drop in that. But But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'll leave you with one little play out of this final song. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to get some rest because I'm in my bedroom and it is absolutely fucking baking. So yeah, I'm gonna get some lunch, get a rest, get some ice down me because I'm sick fucking melting. But yeah, I hope you have fun making melodic rhythm if that's what you choose to do. But yeah, I will catch you in the next tutorial. Hopefully will be next week. Hopefully I can keep up with my weekly schedule again. But yeah, stay good, stay awesome, and I will catch you all in the next episode.